Hello guys, and guys hello. Bunny's here to say hello too. As Golden Week 2020 starts to loom on the horizon, let's have another video from 2019's, when I took a trip around Kansai with my parents. This time we're in what is probably my favourite place to visit in Japan. Where are we, me from the past with the sun in his eyes? Today we are in Nara, starting with Gangoji. Like Shitenoji in Osaka, Gangoji claims to be the first Buddhist temple in Japan, founded around 588 in the former capital, Asuka. It was moved to the new capital, Nara, back in 718. It's a lovely, peaceful little building, surrounded by numerous tombstones and devotional carvings, in a collection known as Futoden. Lots of nice stones. As with almost all old Japanese buildings, this is a reconstruction, the main hall being rebuilt, reportedly using some of the original wood and roof tiles, in 1954. Here's Dad with some quick maths.
Well, it was made in the 50s, then it's nearly 70 years old.
Good job, Papa. This temple is also home to a collection of national treasures in a small museum. There are some lovely statues and mandala, and this miniature pagoda, which is genuinely 1,300 years old, and apparently considered a true building, not just a model. Well, alright then. From Gangoji we walked through the atmospheric old streets to our next stop.
This is Kofukuji, the 5-story pagoda.
I perhaps didn't film Kofukuji, most visitors' first view of historic Nara, as much as I could have, but it was perhaps over-familiar to me. After all, Nara is one of my favourite places in Japan, but I've been here many times. I first came to Nara, also with my parents, back when I was a small child. I came again as part of my graduation trip and several times since, and the mixture of such a concentration of history and a strange eccentricity really appealed to me. And what do I mean by eccentricity? Well, maybe the most memorable and quirky thing about the ancient Japanese capital of Nara is that the historic centre is totally overrun by deer.
Do you care about me? I don't have any food. Don't care about me.
These deer, or shika, are very cute, famously learning to bow Japanese style to try and induce a passing human to give it a delicious senbei cracker. They've been allowed to roam free in the city since the 8th century, considered sacred because the god Takemikazuchi used one as his steed. That makes Nara's historical centre into something of a deer park, which is the kind of eccentric yet historical quirk I really like. Next, tucked away down some little alleyways, was probably the highlight of the day for me, since I hadn't been there before, a couple of really lovely little traditional gardens.
This is the beautiful Yoshiki-en.
Yoshiki-en is a very pretty little garden on former temple grounds, divided into 3 parts. The current layout dates to 1919, and it was open to the public in the 80s. There's a pond garden, a camellia garden, and a moss garden with a sweet little tea house. What appealed to me the most here was all the garden's very beautiful stone lanterns. I love stone lanterns, and I got to see a whole lot of very attractive ones on this trip.
What a lovely place. Oh, you lost your hibukuro. And now, Isui-en, just next door. Nice fishies. Don't have any food for you, fishy, sorry. Lost interest. Nice little tea ceremony house. This place is a little expensive.
Isui-en is a garden and museum with an entrance fee, which for some reason I felt compelled to complain about in Japanese.
900 yen. ちょっとだけ高いね.
Thank you for that.
But I suspect this is going to be beautiful. Very nice.
Isui-en is a very pretty traditional garden in two parts, one dating from 1899 and the other largely unchanged since the late 1600s. It doesn't have as many stone lanterns as Yoshiki-en, but it has some nice ones and benefits from what the Japanese call shakke, or borrowed scenery. That means something in the background is incorporated into the scenery of the garden, in this case the grand temple building of Todaiji, which I failed to capture in any of these little clips. Go me!
There's also a little museum.
The little museum, Neiraku Bijutsukan, has a small but interesting display of traditional artworks, and I'd say it's definitely worth a brief dip into. After a quick lunch, a little curry with pumpkin slices, we went to Nara's main attraction.
And of course we have to go to Todai-ji.
Todaiji is a temple complex founded in 738, and the Great Hall was the world's largest wooden building until 1998. The huge bronze Buddha statue inside was completed in 751, and the complex became a place of public worship the following year. The Nandaimon, the Great Southern Gate, has stood since its last reconstruction was completed in 1203. And the Ni-o, the guardian spirits housed in the gate, are originals from that time, from master sculptors Unkei and Kakkei.
Fearsome fellow. It's so busy today. This is what happens when you come in Golden Week. No matter how many times I come here though, it's always impressive. This was last rebuilt in the Edo period, and it used to be even bigger than it is now. And here of course is the Daibutsu itself. Nowhere near as big as the Ushiku Daibutsu, but ancient and impressive nonetheless. This is far and away the most crowded I've ever seen this place. But I'd say it's worth the crowds. Obviously it's much less ancient and much less cool, but at Ushiku they did like to say that this can fit into the palm of the hand of the Buddha there.
Still, the Great Buddha is very striking, as is the Daibutsu Den, the hall housing it. When it was rebuilt in 1709, it was actually rebuilt smaller, and originally the complex had two pagodas standing at 100 meters tall each. Perhaps when the temple needs to be rebuilt sometime in the future, they'll restore that original version. Another curiosity is inside, where there is a hole in one of the pillars, supposedly the size of one of the Buddha's nostrils. If you can fit through, you will supposedly be taken closer to enlightenment, though I suspect one day someone will get stuck fast in there and it will become a gloriously absurd disaster. Personally, I don't need to take the risk, because I already went through it as a small child. Good job, small me. Outside, we had a good explore of the rest of the temple complex, which I hadn't done before. Got some melon ice cream and headed up Mount Wakakusa. On the way up to Nigatsu-do, an important prayer hall last built in 1669, I was delighted to see a lot of stone lanterns. Stone lanterns, or ishidoro, have become a bit of a passion for me, as I find them very aesthetically pleasing. And as I said before, I'd get to see a whole lot of them in Nara.
This is what my garden should look like. Yes. There are so many ishidoro here. It's a collection of yukimidoro. I love ishidoro.
In the temple itself, some attractive cast bronze hanging lanterns were there too. This kind of lantern is called tsuridoro. We'd see a lot more of those later on. As we continued around the temple grounds and the wider Nara Park, we saw a lot of beautiful things. Gnarled ancient trees, smaller temples, and of course a whole lot of stone lanterns. Especially my favourite type, the tall standing tachidoro. Now I'm conscious that while I think these lanterns are super beautiful and interesting, not everyone watching this might be sharing in my interest, and I don't want this to be like one of those university lectures where the professor shows you 10,000 slides of a small hill where their favourite writer may once have sat, or something like that. So let's move on to our last stop for the day, the highly impressive Shinto shrine, Kasuga Taisha. Can't promise we're done with lanterns just yet though.
Here we are in Kasuga Taisha, another place with a lot of ishidoro. This is actually the first time I managed to make it out here.
Yes, actually, Kasuga Taisha is famous for its lanterns, both stone and bronze, or copper. The most common type of standing lantern is actually called Kasuga Doro, but for me the most impressive thing about this shrine was the incorporation of nature, and it's famous for this kind of beautiful tree.
This lovely old wisteria.
That was the famous Suzunari no Fuji, a 700-year-old wisteria tree. There are more than 200 wisteria trees in the shrine, and seeing them in bloom was a highlight of our trip. As well as this lovely integration of nature, we got to see a very interesting religious ritual involving some greenery too.
Solemn ceremony. Almost. One more time. Oh, no. Try again. Yes.
And then of course there are the lanterns, the many, many lanterns. Over 3,000 of them. Metal hanging lanterns, stone lanterns, lanterns displayed in a long, dark room.
Many metal lanterns. I prefer big stone lanterns, but these metal ones are nice too. So this is the kind of thing I like to see. The square ones seem more popular in Kyoto and Nara, but I prefer the more rounded ones like these. But this is the most beautiful one of all. Oh yes, so many lanterns here. I like this one. And this one. This one's very unusual. I want them all.
Our day in Nara was drawing to a close. We headed back to the historical town centre, which in itself has plenty to look at.
Nara, you just get this kind of thing. And this very historical looking Lawson. I think one of the reasons I like Nara so much is that all these old trees show you that the land just hasn't been disturbed for such a long time. You can really feel the history when you're here.
Very proud of myself for making such an astute observation once again. We went back to the station and headed to our hotel in Osaka. Nara had been too full of tourists to find a good place to eat, so we had tempura in a restaurant close to our hotel instead. It was called Sansui no Waza, and it was pretty awesome. Alright, well that's all for my video about our 2019 Nara trip. Golden Week 2020 is, yes, fast approaching as I said before, and I do have a couple more of these videos to make, but hey, I don't have any big excursions planned for this year or anything, so there's not going to be any more of these videos piling up. Thank you so much for indulging my modern day equivalent to boomers making everyone sit around in their living room with their holiday snaps on the slide projector, and I will see you again next time. Bye bye!